Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to our third annual conference. Stand by the mic. Don't worry, no corny GIS this year. Didn't go so well last time. It is my pleasure to introduce one of my new colleagues at Williams. Miles Harris is currently an associate GIS analyst at Williams and was formerly of Access Midstream. He has been in the GIS profession for the past 2 years, working in support of the midstream development operations for the Marcellus Shale region out of Jane Lou, West Virginia. Prior to that, he graduated with a BA in geography from the University of Oklahoma and served 7 years in the Marine Corps Reserve as an anti-tank guided missile man. He currently has a passion for automating GIS maps and streamlining workflow processes with Python. Beyond work, he enjoys running, hiking, reading, and spending time with his wife. So, with that, Miles Harris.
Open this up real quickly here. Good morning. Like I said, my name is Miles Harris. I have a little bit of experience. I'm getting there. What I'm going to talk to you about is my project, which is leveraging ArcGIS Python API in support of now Williams right-of-way support for the Marcellus South region of assets. Before I go into that, I'm going to go over a brief overview of and outline my presentation here. I'll talk about my roles and responsibilities, emphasizing right-of-way, especially some of the challenges associated with purchasing right-of-way easements, and the meat and potatoes is talk about the process improvement opportunity I identified, and look at the current state or former process now and my implemented solution, and then lastly go over the outcome and results. So my role at now Williams, I work out of the Jane Lou field office. I've been there for 1.5 years now. I've been with the company 2 years. I primarily support the midstream business needs relating to pipeline development as well as operations, kind of helping out all the main functional groups, so engineering, construction, right-of-way, route development, operations, survey, all of those. I primarily manage assets for asset data for assets in central West Virginia as well as southwest PA and much of the northern panhandle of West Virginia. My job is that data management, going out and getting the data as well as providing maps and analysis to the end users. As far as right-of-way goes, so the right-of-way department is I don't know if you've ever interacted with any land department, but it's pretty demanding, because their job is to acquire that land so that we can build a pipeline to go across. And it poses some challenges. So let's talk about that. So the goal of right-of-way is to acquire the land. Essentially, we need to get the landowners to sign or agree to let us build a pipeline across their land. There are a lot of competing costs and interests with this. Maybe the landowners are competing, trying to get as much money out of you as they can. Maybe it's with other companies, that you've got other companies trying to build out in the area. You also got permitting requirements. Maybe we're trying to go across this particular landowner to avoid a wetland or a habitat or something of that nature. And then foreign line crossings, we certainly have a lot of pipeline in the ground already that isn't that new. So all that has to be considered. Those types of agreements have their own stipulations and stuff, but ultimately it rolls up into the landowner agreement. That's our goal, is to get them to sign, agree to let us build our pipeline, and it's challenging. So how do I interface with this? So using GIS, I essentially provide maps that the land agents can negotiate these agreements with really provide something that the landowners can look at and essentially tell us where they don't want the pipeline or if they want it at all. You know, so having maps to help this out, it's really important. So that's where I come in. I create what are called limited disturbance property exhibit maps, and this is just a snapshot of some of the data. I don't know, you can't really read any of that. Apologize, but I saw some little guy. Okay, so here, this is just to add a little geographical context. I like context. But, so this is to illustrate some of the basic symbology we typically do for the map. So the map has this white dashed line for the property. You've got, this is the pipeline route coming across. You've got the limited disturbance in orange. Looks better on a map. And it's just 8.5 typically, but also to add some more context, you got different landowners. You got this landowner named Snoopy right here that's got a little bit coming across this land. There's also the Beagle Scouts property right here. The Tebow property. Then you've got Franklin down here. This little pink is actually proposed access road that we're maybe looking at. And then McPatty down here. All these landowners have something in common, and that's we're trying to build our right-of-way, build our pipeline across the right-of-way. But the reality of it is, we want the negotiations to go as smooth as possible, so we only want to show a landowner a map showing his property and not necessarily show, the adjacent properties. And so that's what this map does. It just shows that one map per landowner, and it makes it easy to negotiate off of. The three main requirements for this map, we have limited disturbance, which is essentially the extent of the easement for pipeline right-of-way across the landowner's tract. So really just that purchased easement we're looking to acquire. And then you have your proposed pipeline, so a lot of times landowners want to see, okay, well, where's this pipeline going to go? And then any proposed access roads that we may or may not be trying to acquire if we're looking for an access road to get to the valve site, or it's just for construction. And then, of course, showing the tract boundary. My problem is whenever I started providing this support, I was walked through this particular workflow, and I found that the existing process was very inefficient. It took forever. I didn't always get updated project information. It was partially automated, so my platform that I work off of is ArcGIS 10.1, and the former process was a model and built-in model builder, and it worked. And essentially, you could get the output from that, pass it into a particular template, and set up some other stuff to generate the maps. But with the inconsistency in receiving updated project information, the variation in the size or scope of the project, it just made things difficult and time consuming. So when I say size and project, it could mean, this project was only going across 3 landowners, or maybe it's going across 50. When you have any manual processing, if you have to do any of that, like the more that you have to export manually, the more time consuming it is. So my solution was to just streamline this process, make it automated, because I felt like it could be. And I wanted to use state-of-the-art technology, which is, in this instance, ArcGIS, with their Python API, specifically the ArcPy module. So this is to kind of flesh out, sorry about that, just flesh out the problem a bit for more. The existing process is inefficient. I talked about that. Also with right-of-way, often it's the case that they want their map as soon as possible because they're getting ready to go out send their land agents out to talk to the landowner because they're on the landowner's, time schedule. So that was challenging. And again, varying scope of the project. From my standpoint, I had to consider processing of the data. So once again, did I have the current route information? It was often the case that I would think I had the current route information, go through 5 to 30 minutes or whatever to generate these maps, only to send them and then get an email back saying you don't have the updated information. You need to get with route development, get the current data, update the maps. And it was very frustrating. And when you do this over and over, it just strengthens your resolve to solve the problem. Another consideration was any back-end enterprise database business integration. So we had one between our right-of-way database and our GIS layer, so we could get all of our landowner information. We pulled all of that from the database that right-of-way was working in, and it links up to our layer. But that, among some of our other integrations, updated overnight. So I had to consider that, ensuring that I get the project information I needed updated if I was going to, have this automated. So let's look at the existing or formal process now. So I had initially I would select my project information, and I would open up the model and run the model in Model Builder to get the outputs I needed to set up the map template. And I used the MPS Atlas extension. Who's ever heard of that? A few. So it's not bad. It is kind of clunky. I think, in my opinion, it's inefficient. But especially when I was going through this, it's not bad. Essentially, what it does, it allows you to take certain inputs and set up map sheets and essentially create atlases. But there were limitations in exporting as well as setting extents and stuff, or at least for what I wanted it to do for my process. And so I needed to fix that. And then after I set up the template, I would still have to go into each map sheet on the MPS in the template and set my extents and export it. And then I would adopt a custom naming convention for each PDF. So the challenge is, I didn't want to use MPS Atlas, so I have to update my template. I think with this project, I understood that the process itself had to be evaluated. I had to get with right-of-way and the other business groups to identify where it was staying consistent with their needs and where it needed to change. One of the changes that I had to do was they wanted to see access roads alongside the pipeline, the proposed route right-of-way, and so that was one of the changes that I had to add. And then I also had to improve my relationships. So, like working with route development, right-of-way, it was for this project to work. I needed to improve that communication, get them to send me timely updates to ensure I wasn't to reduce the amount of rework essentially. And then the manual process of this model just made me want to improve that so that I could fully automate it, which I did. And then looking at the turnaround time for these maps, like it would vary depending on the project, because if you're having to export 50 maps out one at a time, in addition to that, you have other priorities, other business groups that you're supporting, and it's challenging. And so I wanted to really lock that down and get it consistent. So my solution, I created a Python scripting tool. I primarily use data-driven pages as well as the Python programming language. So data-driven pages, who's heard of that? It's pretty sweet. I'm a big fan of it, especially seeing it and looking back at the MPS Atlas extension. I was really pleased with it. But some of the benefits that I was able to capitalize on was setting those page definitions so that I could show only the relevant data for that particular landowner map. as well as, you know, having some of those map elements, you know, the dynamic text elements to reflect certain information in your data set, that's really, really exciting. And also, the biggest thing was it can be accessed and, it can be accessed using the ArcGIS site package. Who's used the ArcGIS? We've got a few. Man, I would encourage everyone to go out and try it out because it's just really robust. If you work in the ArcGIS environment, you can do pretty much all. It's made for modeling your workflows, and you can pretty much script any particular tool that you wanted to run in our toolbox. And I saw that and I was like, man, I got to figure out how to use it. And so with that came learning the Python programming language. Now, disclaimer, I wouldn't say that I'm an expert in any way, but I started learning this, and it took about 6 months for me to learn enough of it to implement this solution to my existing problem. And since then, you know, I've been just trying to learn more and more because it's just really beneficial. But a little bit about the language, it's really stable. You know, it's been around since the 1980s. It's got a large user community. It's open source, so, you know, you can use it in conjunction with other software as well as other types of GIS platforms. And then the big benefit is leveraging the ArcGIS site package within ArcGIS, which was necessary. And with that being said, I'm just going to talk about some of the highlights that I capitalized on using the ArcGIS. And I'm going to focus on the ArcGIS mapping, which is one of their particular classes relating to working with map templates and automating maps. So some of the, well, before I say that, I want to say that I'm going into the scripting because I want to show you that a lot of what I was trying to, what I learned to do in Python, I was essentially doing the same thing if I was approaching it from a manual standpoint. So I'm going to walk you through these highlights, and then you'll see that my manual process and kind of the highlighted scripted process, and you'll see the benefit of it. So some of the highlights, you can set map document properties with it. I used it for setting, you know, authors, or just using the map document object to call layer files in it. You can also turn on and off layer files. You can set definition queries. So this was great. So, you know, we all use SQL in order to question our data. And the fact that I could create a text string and pass it as a SQL statement into the particular layer to get the data that I needed to pass into another solution was, it was amazing. So here's a little in front, you see, I don't know if you can read it, but you can see how I did the string definition. I assigned it, you know, line name equals whatever, and that's reflecting my data set. But I think it's fairly intuitive if you're querying for that particular project. Some other highlights, you got manipulating data frames. Oops, sorry. You can zoom to extents, which I was really excited about because, again, with the MPS Atlas and all that, I felt limited, and the fact that I could do that in here just solved a lot of problems. And you can edit map elements. So who's ever had a text box that they wanted to say something a certain way, but you just, you always found yourself manually going into it. Well, with the ArcGIS mapping, you can actually set your text boxes to say what you want. And for my tool, so if you look here, you know, I essentially called out the name of the box, so every element has a name. And then I assign this text, which is just a concatenation of this object, which was actually a cursor object, and this, which is representing a string, plus that little guy. And it's updating the template itself, so it's just really handy. And then below that here, I've got this data frame object, and this is how one of the data frame object methods is zooming to selected features. And so by a line of code, I can zoom to whatever feature I just selected, as well as above that, doing the select layer by attribute. So it's just really, really exciting, really cool, pretty intuitive, I think. Some other highlights, obviously using data-driven pages. So what I did is I took the map document object. One of its classes was the data-driven pages, and then I took that class and passed project information to iterate over each landowner to essentially set the page ID to the data-driven pages enabled map template and export each page. And that's a whole mouthful. Yeah, but it was really beneficial, really helpful. I also, I was trying to name each PDF as well as store the PDFs in a file folder in a particular format. So what I did, I used the string manipulating techniques that is enabled with Python to essentially name the PDF the way I wanted to. So I didn't have to manually set it to the index number for the particular landowner and then name it for the landowner. And then the bottom right corner here, you see that I was able to create this directory and then name it for the project, and then I added the date that this tool was ran. So with that being said, we'll talk about some of the dependencies of benefits. So dependencies, the time of receipt of project data was still something I depended on. It was outside the scope of the tool, so that was just dependent on relationships. But I have improved that, and I continually improve that business relationship. Another dependency, I have a script now, and it's working, but I need to maintain it. So say you're a smaller company, you get absorbed into a bigger company, and in the future, there are probably going to be some broken links. Whatever you had hard-coded into the script, you need to account for if it's referencing certain files, that kind of thing. And then I have to periodically evaluate the process, make sure it's consistent with the business needs. And some of the benefits. So, the previous time for this project, it took a long time to create the maps, comparatively. But now I can consistently expect between 2 to 5 minutes. If it's greater than that, something's wrong with the script or something's going on with the server. But, so I have that consistency, and then, with that consistency is minimal impact from the project scope. Like, it doesn't matter if there are 3 landowners or 50 or 100, as long it's all managed in my data, and as long as I have everything working correctly, it's not going to impact the time frame. Python is pretty fast. And then also this scripting, this tool is easily adjustable for future needs. I wanted to make it flexible if it's the case that land comes back and they say, we just want to show them the center line, no footage, or maybe they want to add a whole nother data set. We've been collecting valve site data, earlier on in the development process, and we want to show our landowners that. Well, it's just adding that to the map template and querying it and updating the script to reflect that, So that's one of the benefits of this script tool, and I would say any script tool once you get a competency with it. Now the process, manual process, just to recap. So my manual process, I would go into the map template and select the center lines and access roads. I would process the features in the model, and then I would open up the template, go to each page, set my queries for the information I needed, and export adjust the extents and export each project. Now, with the Python project process, you can see, or you should be able to see, just from the highlights, that I'm able to do all of that within the script. I've got, the input variables on that simple tool interface, and I didn't talk about it, but with the script tool interface, I wanted to, simplify it. I wanted it to have only the necessary variables for this, so that if myself or someone backing me up could run it, they could without very little questions. But in the tool, I set the workspace and I processed the features. I essentially could export the model into a Python script, and then adjust it and, you know, use that. So I've got the geoprocessing part already established. And then within the map template and leveraging Python, I would update my text boxes and whatever other map elements I wanted to show with it. And finally, I would iterate over each landowner and export the pages with the nice you know, naming conventions that I wanted. So the outcome, here's kind of what it looks like. You know, you'll see that, I don't know, maybe you can kind of read it, but the index number and then the underscore and then the landowner's name. So we got Charlie, Violet, you know, I think they all live in Pennsylvania, but as you can see, it's pretty simple for, say, a land agent to open up this folder and pick out the essentially the maps they needed. Maybe they're going to talk to Charlie on Tuesday, and that was the only one they needed. You know? So it's very, very helpful. Here's the exhibit itself. As you can see and maybe read, you know, it's pretty simple. You know, the extent is around the boundary of the tract. This is the cat next door. And it's got a little disclaimer over here, the logo, space for landowners to sign, and some basic landowner information, footages. So considerations going forward for this project, you know, I learned a lot. You know, I think that I can carry the skills that I acquired in it with other workflows. And essentially what I want to do is continue to reevaluate this process to improve it, and hopefully bring this value to other areas of business, other areas of Williams, you know, so that we can improve our timelines, our budgets, our accountability. And, you know, with learning this, you know, I continually want to assess for consistency with what I deliver, as well as need to assess for the feasibility of a particular, you know, of a particular project. If I take on a new one, I want to make sure that I can do what they're asking. And then I'm looking for that user feedback. I want to make sure that I'm meeting their needs. With that being said, I want to end it with this quote. I don't know if you figured it out, but I'm a fan of Peanuts. This quote I thought was fitting. Learn from yesterday, live for today. Look to tomorrow, rest this afternoon. I just want to say thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I'll be happy to take any questions. I don't know what my time was.
Quick question. Is the goal of this eventually to move to completely automated land management and just do all series themselves, make the maps themselves?
You know, that's a...
The fellow from Cortex tell you.
Yeah, so yeah, we already got it. You know, so in my defense, I haven't actually got the opportunity to physically work with GeoCortex workflows. That's actually one of my goals eventually, is to get into more where I can do that. But so the challenging thing is, especially right now, you're kind of finding a paradigm shift in utilizing technology. We're going into a period where technology is more readily available to everyone, and there's a certain complicated expected. Well, I don't know if you've all come across this, but some land agents or some other folks, you'll come across some that are just, they struggle with it. And so at this point, I can't do that, but it is a goal of mine. You know, at this point, it's far easier for me to run this and email them so they can print them and grab them. But it is a goal of mine. I would like to get to the point, it's just, you know, training people and reinforcing people. It's a job in itself, I think. So, but yeah.
I was wondering if you could speak to some of the challenges you might have had with like reroutes and different changes to what we're going through different properties.
Oh man, yeah. So first of all, I want to say that the biggest challenge about this project was trying to learn Python, trying to solve this solution while still carrying out the formal process so that I can meet the business needs, even though they're really inefficient, not worth the cost that they were for their benefit. But as far as rerouting, so I work in a version data set. So a lot of this was really dependent on working with our route development department and getting that timely deliverable of that shapefile for that route. So my workflow would be I would get that data and I would go into my version data set and then I would update it. And the great thing I found about using the map templates and ArcGIS mapping and stuff, I can reflect version data in there. So I could essentially go in and edit it and then it would reflect that as soon as I ran the tool. So that was very helpful. But it is challenging, I think, just trying to just build your relationships and get the data you need the way you need it. It's still an ongoing battle with a lot of people, working with people across the company. That answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
Just want to say, Cabot's a fan of data-driven pages, and we wish that the whole state of Pennsylvania was in a parcel asset management system, so we could give you guys all the data, and we could get our lines in and get everybody routed, and I think more effort needs to be put forth to get the legislators to understand that we need to manage these data sets so we can do our jobs and protect the environment and route the pipelines where they need to go.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's challenging to do that, but the idea is having that forward thinking that to account for those types of just solutions to the energy industry as a whole. I think the more we can improve the data, the more we can improve. So, anyways, any other questions? Okay. We will say that is good.